Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Dr. Jeff May, and welcome to the first ever episode of Doctor's Orders, advice you should actually take. Now, before some of you guys go down the road of, man, that sounds really arrogant, that sounds what the word would be, self-absorbed. Don't worry, for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you will see that I've already been notified of that, courtesy of some beautiful people out there on Facebook. But hey, the point of this episode, sitting down and saying, okay, what are we going to talk about round one? Because you only get round one with some people. Knowing that, first of all, I guess I'm not doing this for people. It's always about the message, not about the messenger. And doing things for people will always leave you disappointed, for sure. In the end, if it's not prioritized, right? Prioritized on the kingdom ladder. We'll more into that someday, maybe somewhere. But for now, like this video it's titled, $1.6 million into a small town. Why make that investment? And we are sitting here. I'm up in the studio of our new health center built here in Jordan, Minnesota. I've been a chiropractor for 14 years. We've done things in the game in terms of, seen a lot of healing miracles, seen a lot of beautiful things over the years. But most importantly, we want to continue to grow and continue to help reach people. But as I was sitting watching or thinking about this episode, I'm like, hey, what about my kids? See, I've got an amazing, beautiful, smoking hot wife, as my phone contact shows. That's what she is in my phone. 4 beautiful kids, not because I like kids, but because reference what I just said. Beautiful, beautiful wife, Olivia, 4 children. And hopefully someday they listen to this. Because at the heart of it, right now at the time of the recording, they are 12, 11, just turning 8 and soon to turning 6 here for the 4 ages. I'm learning their names next. Don't worry. I'm going to get their names down, I promise. But I want them to understand that there's a lot of things in the world today. Like right now, the recording, this is the end of 2021. We've been through, everybody knows 2020, what that was, what it spilled over into, the fact that, 2020 is going to be marked with the word pandemic for a lot of people. I'm going to label it whiners. I'm going to label it the people who wanted to whine the most seem to get the most attention. And it's time to make winning more popular than whining. And with that comes work. And so in all of that, with it, knowing that there's a lot of voices in the world, there's a lot of things that are begging for your attention, that are paying for your attention, marketing, advertising, like a lot of the things we even do here for the health center. But at the core end of it, and at the end of it all, what voice are you going to listen to? That's kind of the messaging behind there, because six and a half months ago, what I'm sitting in now in terms of a $1.6 million building was dirt. It was grass. It was dirt. There wasn't a single piece of foundation laid. And at the end of 2019 is when 2018 purchased the land for what we're sitting in right now. And the crazy thing to think about it is in the course of that, people will look at me and they'll say, well, you know what? You're a business owner. You were handed it all. You're a male. You have it easier, and all the things that the world wants to tell you. And at the end of it, when my kids are watching this, I want to let them know that something that they probably already do, because they hear me say it a lot, is that hard work doesn't work unless you work hard. And I know as my kids were listening to that, they finished that sentence, because we'll walk around my house and, whether it's Bennett or Lily or Lewis and young Theo, I'll be like, hey, hard work doesn't work. And I'll wait, and then they return response. They say, unless you work hard. And I love that, because that's what it is. But more importantly than even that is I am sitting in $1.6 million worth of faith to say, hey, in a town of 6,000 people, Southwest Minnesota, why on earth would you make that investment? You didn't have to. If I were to talk to myself, I would say, well, you didn't have to make that investment. The place you are at, you're doing great. You're helping people. You're earning a great living. Your wife was able to stay home and take care of the kids and great education and all these things. Why? Why would you put that debt load on top of yourself? And I would say because that is what God put in my heart. That is what God put in my heart. And that's the key here is knowing whose voice to follow, because in the world there's going to be a lot of voices. And if that voice doesn't resonate with what God has shown you in your life, or what he's told you, with core values that serve you, then it's the wrong voice. And ultimately, there's a lot of people, including myself. I can go back just a handful of years, not that long ago, where I was listening to everybody else's voice. Everybody else's voice that says, hey, you need to do this, do it this way, don't do that. And a lot of those were centered in somebody else's interest. And it may have padded their pocketbook at the time. It might have done a lot of things, but rather than live in guilt and shame and regret, I want my children to know that everything is a lesson. There are lessons in the struggle. And I want to share this quick story here. And knowing that, there's been some recent people who want to poke doubt and guilt and all those things into the vision, but that's nothing new. Because it wasn't that long ago. I remember 14 years ago, I was sitting, it was a Wednesday, and it happened to be payroll on Friday. And I was looking at the bank account, and there was not enough money in the bank account to cover payroll for the 2 staff I had at the time. Now listen, I was new in business. This is maybe my second year in practice. And I was like, man, shoot, I'm going to go bankrupt. Like, I literally, second year in practice, going to go bankrupt. How is that possible? I'm a failure. I've got student loans to pay for, and all the voices, wanted to pour in and bury me in self-doubt and uncertainty. And I remember that morning I had one report to give to a couple. It was a patient. I remember Dan and Wanda. I remember them from 14 years ago. And the crazy thing is they were the first patients. I sat there and I explained what I found, my care plans and my x-rays and all the things I did back then. And they were the first patients to ever prepay for their care. They literally took out a credit card, prepaid $2,200. It was something around there for his care over the next, 6 to 9 months, whatever it was back then. And I was able to make payroll. And the crazy thing was that in those moments, that morning, if you would have told me that was going to happen, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have said, there's no way that's going to happen. But now here we are, like I said, 14 years later, sitting in a $1.6 million building built on results, built on faith, and built on those things. And so I want to encourage my kids, as they're listening to this, is like, you guys, there are going to be so many voices that tell you things. And if they don't resonate with what your mother and I have tried to instill in you, if they don't resonate with what God's word tells you and shows you, that those are not the voices that you need to listen to. Now, they can get loud. They can be sometimes a lot louder than what we think God's voice sounds like. But at the end of the day, what voice you listen to ultimately will guide you in what path you take and what steps you take. And know this, no matter how far off the path you may feel or you may actually get, you are only one step away from moving closer to back towards what God's plan is for your life. And listen, you guys, I'm not a preacher, and yes, I say God a lot and all those things, but I want you to understand that these things would not exist outside of what has been created and what is happening. And so as you're watching this, and we wrap up on this, this first episode of Doctor's Orders, I want to leave you with this. I want to leave you with the fact that while in today's world, December 12th, as the time of this recording, 2021, the whiners may seem loud. They may seem like they are actually louder than any voice of reason, than any voice that seems sane. But ultimately, the voice you choose to listen to will help determine where you go and where you'll end up. And I will tell you that there are so many people, being a doctor for 14 years, listen, one of my favorite things to say is water and walking are free. We all know we should do more of them. Yet the reason that we don't, a lot of times we just don't believe we can. And so I want to encourage you guys today, at the end of this podcast, we always want to try and have some takeaways, some things that say, hey, go and do this. The doctor's orders, advice you should actually take. And today I want you to just sit down. I want you to take a sheet of paper. I want you to divide it in half. I want you on one side of the piece of paper to say, okay, here's what I'm hearing. And on the other side of the paper, I want to say, here's what I know. And I want you to compare those two lists. And I want you to be able to take and say, hey, what am I hearing? I'm hearing that I'm going to get sick, that by the time I'm 40, I'm going to be fat, fatigued, and just flat out discouraged and frustrated in life, but here's what I know. I know that I've overcome XYZ. Like for me, I shared that story of not being able to make payroll. I'm able to have that story and know that in struggle, I'm able to overcome hard things, that I've been equipped and I'm able, and I'm not helpless. And so I want you to just take that sheet of paper and ultimately I want you to have a visual. Take a pen and paper. I know it sounds old school, but sit down and write down, hey, here's what I'm hearing. Here's what I know. And where those two lists don't match up, you have a crossroads. You get to say, I want to go into what I know, or you get to go into what other people are telling you. And at the end of it, what other people are telling you, usually are things that aren't going to benefit you, but are going to benefit them. So that's your doctor's orders, you guys. Let's make winning more popular than whining coming up in the new year. And that's something to look forward to.